If you are someone that actually gets invited to an interview, that is already telling. That is telling that there was something in that, written application that showed that you are someone that is suitable for this role. And essentially, when they meet you for the actual interview, they want to see, okay, is what we saw on paper actually translating to the person that we are seeing in person? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bomikazi Lupindo. I am a clinical psychologist and a PhD student at the University of Oxford. Recently, a couple of my friends have come to the end of their journey in academia and have started looking into getting into jobs. And I've been helping a couple of them with the interview processes because I actually realized that if you are going in to train as a psychologist, there's just so many interview processes that you go through, and even post that, trying to get a job, trying to get into internships, those kind of things prep you to actually get a sense of the interview process and the things that actually help you become successful in an interview. So I'm going to share with you guys a couple of general tips that I have learned in terms of preparing for my interviews and how I make sure that when I do show up in those spaces, I'm actually successful in whatever interview that I engage in. So I've made a couple of points that I am just gonna go through with you guys. So the first one is let's talk. So employers have this informal kind of let's meet, let's have a chat. And for you, you can walk into that space thinking, actually, this is fine. They're not evaluating me. I don't really have to prepare for this. But honestly, any kind of engagement that a prospective employer wants to have with you, that is an actual assessment. You are walking into that space, even though it's an informal space and the interactions you guys might be having feel like they're informal. They're already assessing you. They're already evaluating you to see, is this person suitable for this role? Is this someone that I'd actually want to invite to an actual interview and get a better sense of, are they suitable for this role, for this team, for this organization? So the way in which you present yourself within that space needs to make sure that it's already relaying to that person that you're having a conversation with that, hey, listen, actually, I'm suitable for this job, I'm suitable for this role, and I'm suitable for this particular team. The second question that they like asking is, tell us about yourself. This question often throws people off in the sense that you then go into relaying your life story. In essence, this question is trying to elicit from you, who are you? What is your journey that led you into coming into this role that you're applying for? What is your education? What work experience do you have? What interests do you have? What personal commitments do you have to this specific role? And whatever questions you answer in terms of tell us about yourself, they need to tie into the role itself. So who is Bomikazi? How did her experiences and her educational experiences and her work experiences and some other life experiences make her particularly interested in this specific role? And what personal commitment does she have to this role that is beyond financial contribution? Because that gives an impression of, actually, this is the thing that kind of makes you stand out more than like people that might not have like an emotional or personal attachment to this kind of work, and therefore that also gives you a competitive advantage when it comes to the actual interviews itself. And most importantly, are you applying for this role specifically for the monetary value this role brings, or do you have any other personal and emotional investment into the work itself that actually make you a more suitable candidate for this role, that make you a lot more committed to this role than any other person? Another important thing for interviews is know the language of your sector. So whatever industry that you are in, know exactly what the selling words are. So for example, in the UK, like trauma-informed care is a big thing. So the minute you drop that word in an interview, already people are interested. They're just like, yes. Safeguarding is another term that, is quite popular and very important in whatever space that you're working with, and especially if you're working with vulnerable groups. So knowing that when I come into an interview and they ask you, tell us about some of your experience, how do you work, or what informs your practice, saying that, trauma-informed care is something that's quite important and informs a lot of my practice because A, B, and C, and now you're diving into this term trauma-informed care to actually show them that, hey, this is how I actually work. And also safeguarding being a big thing, being able to drop those words that are important within your industry, and then being able to see, hey, this person is actually clued up in terms of the work that we do. They clued up in terms of the things that we have an interest in and the language that is important within our industry. And therefore, actually this person knows quite a lot about the kind of work that they'll be coming in and doing. This person will actually make meaningful contributions because they already know how to speak the language of this industry and of the specific job that you are going into. And another important one, guys, I think you don't pay enough attention to job descriptions. Like, job descriptions are the thing that actually tell you what it is you'll be asked in the interview. So actually, before your interview, sitting down with that job description. So whatever job ad that was there, sitting down with the job description, looking at, are you going to be doing A, B, and C? And sitting down with each one and giving examples of, okay, so this is the kind of experience that I have that relates to this thing. This is the kind of knowledge that relates to this part of the job description, and going through every single one of them. In the actual interview, they might not ask you how, you might do a specific thing that is described in the job description, but they might ask you to, how would you problem solve this kind of thing? And part of problem solving that particular aspect of whatever it is they interviewing you might draw on different things from that job description. So if you already know what your role is, you already know that, this is what I need to draw from in order to problem solve this. Whereas some other questions might be quite direct. Like, so for example, in psychology, they might ask you, how would you conduct a risk assessment? How would you do an initial assessment with a client that's coming in? If you are working as a supervisor, what kind of approach would you have in a scenario like this? So then you would then need to be able to respond drawing from the job description and the answers and the responses that you have formulated from the job description itself. And more importantly, examples, guys, examples actually show that you know exactly what you are talking about. You have done what you are talking about, and therefore it makes you suitable for this role because we know that you know how to do the work. So making examples, if they ask you, what kind of, therapeutic framework do you work from? Saying that, okay, so I work from this therapeutic framework, and when I was working with A, B, and C client, for example, when I was working with A, B, and C client, this is how it played out. So you are showing them that not only do you know the approach that you will be using, but you have practical examples of what you will do and how to actually apply this thing. If you are someone that's never actually had any formal employment, then literally, guys, if you don't know what kind of examples or what they look like, go to ChatGPT, put in there, what does a psychometric assessment look like? What does a risk assessment look like? If you are working in finance, what does an audit report look like? What kind of information do you need for that audit report? And based on the responses that you get from ChatGPT, think about the class examples that you've had, so in lectures and seminars and in whatever other settings that you've been in, what kind of experience have you been exposed to? And if you don't have any kind of formal work that you've done, what other experience do you have? What life experience do you have? What other informal kind of work and assistance you've provided for other people that draw on the same principles that can actually help you give examples about, okay, so this is what I do in relation to this. So when they ask you a question, as much examples as you can draw in to actually show that you can actually do the work and you know how to think critically and be able to apply, because a lot of the people that move from academia right into work, they tend to just have theory. But if you show that, yes, I have the theory, but I'm also thinking about how to practically apply this, even if I haven't had an opportunity to actually work in a role that allows me to actually use these principles in a formal setting, but I have thought about them, I have applied them like in other aspects of my life, and I know how they translate into actual reality. So that's also a big thing. Examples are key in any kind of interview. Another big question is around some of the challenges you anticipate to experience within that role. If you're working within a team, there may be like disagreements around like the ideas that you bring into that space. There may be challenges in terms of relating with each other within the team itself, or in other spaces it could be like having a difficult client. So how would you navigate those challenges that you anticipate having? So already preempt yourself and think about the role itself, and think about, okay, so what kind of challenges do I experience? When in doubt, go to ChatGPT. Like literally, guys, check what kind of challenges do people in this industry experience? What kind of challenges does a psychologist experience in this kind of setting? And then based on that, like start formulating ways in which you would approach and solve those challenges based on the knowledge and the experience, and also your own personal principles and values, but also make sure they align with the overall organizational culture and essentially what the organization itself is trying to promote. On the note of overcoming challenges, another big aspect of any kind of work environment, guys, employers love people who are coming in and they're showing that, you know what, having this person in our team is actually going to improve the overall team and the overall functioning of the organization. So they absolutely love people who are focused on self-improvement, improving others, and improving like the role itself and the organization itself and what we are able to do. So when we're working within, like, for example, in psychology, service improvement is something that's quite important. Making sure that, you know, the way in which we work as a team is something that's also improved. Having a reflective practice where we create spaces where, you know, other people within the organization are able to reflect on some of the things that, you know, they appreciate versus things that they find challenging, and would be able to work a lot more productively if these things were improved. Those kind of things actually draw employers in, because in their minds, they are trying to make a profit. So whatever it is that helps them become more profitable, that makes them more efficient, that makes them more attractive to clients and other organizations or other prospective investors, those are things that they're going to look for. So if you are able to show that, you know, I'm coming into this role and I want to actually improve myself, I want to help you improve the team that I'll be working with, I want to improve the way in which the organization itself functions. So if you are in doubt of what it is that you actually can improve in this specific role, again, guys, ChatGPT, like look at what kind of challenges people experience within that industry, what kind of limitations exist, and realistically, what can you improve as a person in that particular role that you are coming into. And also, if you know that maybe there's a recent article that came out about like a company within the same industry that had a shortfall in a specific area, then this is where you can come in and even make that example that, you know, in the instance of this in this company that this happened, this is something that I had in mind, and this is how they could have prevented that situation had they held in mind A, B, and C. And this is what I would want to bring into a space like that. So this comes in even before they ask, okay, so what is it that makes you like a suitable candidate for this role? Like find a way to actually put that forward to show them that, hey, in my working, yes, I want to do the role itself, but my focus isn't just on the role or on the clients that I'll be working with, but I am focused on my own personal improvement, the improvement of the team that I'll be working with, and the improvement of the organization as a system itself, because that's the thing that's going to help us advance. That's the thing that's going to help us succeed as an organization itself. This also ties in to leadership. So leadership in any role that you come into, you will be a leader. The organization wants to understand, how do you lead? How do you create spaces for other people to actually have opportunities to lead? What do you do when people don't want to respond to your leadership? What do you do to actually ensure that you also collaborating with other people in whatever work that you're doing? So it's quite important for you to hold in mind the type of leadership you have, but whatever leadership style you have, it needs to make sure that you're both a leader, but also create opportunities for other people to lead. You're able to think about how to actually respond to situations where people don't want to follow your leadership in a way that is helpful for the team to continue and to remain cohesive. And also collaborating with people within the organization, collaborating with other third parties who are organizations who are doing similar work, or people who might be interested in whatever work that you are doing, because that kind of leadership actually allows for expansion and a lot more productivity, versus if you're a leader that comes from a perspective of, this is how I lead and I tend to dictate and I'm the only one that can lead. It doesn't create the opportunity for the team itself to grow and the organization itself to grow, because it's solely reliant on one person leading the organization. And if the organization loses that one person, that means it's actually more of a significant loss for them. So therefore, they would rather bring in someone that would ensure that there's a sense of continuity should even this person have to move out of this role or move out of this organization. So guys, those are just the general kind of things that you need to hold in mind when walking into an interview. And for more psychology specific kinds of examples, so for example, for the last job that I interviewed for, I literally went through the job description and I wrote down like specific categories of things that I want to hold in mind. So the first one was trauma-informed care. So what is trauma-informed care? It needs to have a lasting impact, and it's not only relating to more acute forms of trauma, but also more, social or emotional kinds of trauma that we actually experience. That there's a need for safety and trustworthiness in the kind of therapeutic space that we create with clients. And I even gave an example of a client. So this was specifically for a forensic role. So I gave an example of when I was working in correctional services. I was working with a gentleman that was charged for a double murder and an attempted murder, and essentially trying to help them understand how the trauma experiences he had resulted in him enacting stuff. And that was something that was able to draw attention to them, that this person has an understanding of what trauma-informed care. So another thing that we do is assessment and intervention. So assessments in terms of trauma, personality disorders, so thinking about specifically forensic assessments. I've also worked in eating disorder facilities. So how do we do an assessment with a patient that's being admitted into an eating disorder facility? What are some of the things that you need to hold in mind? What actual assessment tools would you use beyond the actual clinical interview? Other things that I also have here are like reflective practice. Why is reflective practice important within an organization that works with mental health? So creating awareness of self and your actions and how they impact your team as a whole, how the decisions you make impact the entire team, thinking more critically about the practice that you have as a person, and how like reflective practice informs that kind of work that you do. And also creating spaces where other people could actually make the same reflections become something that's important. Service improvement, how would you go about like improving the service that you're working in? And approaching supervision. So supervision is another big one. What kind of supervisor am I? How do I show up in that kind of space? doing risk assessments and management of risk. So that's also a big one, regardless of whatever space that you work in. Risk assessment and risk management is going to be a big thing. Therapeutic frameworks that you are able to work from, and what informs like what therapeutic framework you use for a particular client and so forth. And more forensic awareness. So if you're working like in a specialized unit, knowing when like patients are sectioned. So for example, when I was working in the eating disorder facility, I needed to understand what would constitute a patient needing a section in order to receive care. So you become an involuntary patient versus more voluntary patients who are able to actually have insight into their challenges. So know exactly what sections are important in general, but more specifically in the area that you work in. So for example, with forensics, you would need to know like section 47 and 49, specifically within the UK context, and also section 37, because those are the ones that actually determine whether an offender receives treatment within a psychiatric hospital with the forensic unit, or they continue their care within a prison while they serve their sentence and so forth. So those kind of things become quite important. So even with you in your industry, know the kind of things that are important, and the job description gives you an overarching example of that, and you then move from that space of trying to think about examples and responses that you would give in that setting. And that brings us to the end of our video. I think just one last thing that I want to highlight from you guys. If you are someone that actually gets invited to an interview, that is already telling. That is telling that there was something in that, paper submission that you did, or electronic submission of your written application, that showed that you are someone that is suitable for this role. And essentially, when they meet you for the actual interview, they want to see, okay, is what we saw on paper actually translating to the person that we are seeing in person? Can we get additional examples of how it is that whatever they had on their CV actually plays out when they are within those roles that they are applying for? So please just make sure that you don't regurgitate what's in your CV. Draw other examples that actually put to the forefront that, this person knows what to do within this space, and also this person is teachable. This person is willing to learn and continuously improve themselves, so that even if there's something that you don't know, they see that actually this is a person that's very receptive to learning and growing, and therefore this is a person that we can help in terms of getting them where they need to be within this role itself. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was insightful, and please let me know if you find any of these tips helpful in your next interviews. And also, if you guys have any additional questions, please just put them down in the comment section below. And if you guys have any other videos that you would like to see on this channel, please also put them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Mwah.